Welcome, Duncan Orrell-Jones.
Thank you.
Duncan, you're interesting and Slacker is interesting because, there's the names we always hear about, and there's this next tier of names that are working very hard to create a sustainable business, and Slacker is on that tier. Talk to me about how Slacker is different and how you're approaching online radio as a sustainable business.
Yep. So we're different in a number of ways, and there's sort of three components that sort of interplay amongst themselves. First is we've been focused on radio since the get-go, right? So that's kind of part of our DNA.
What does that mean? I'm sorry.
We have essentially built a platform and a programming team that essentially says, let's take all the great things about radio, the things we've heard about today and yesterday, and let's leverage technology to evolve that into the current sort of digital world. And it starts with people, right? We have a approach towards programming that starts with people. We're sort of human-powered radio. And so we have people who are actually programming stations. We have people who are actually on air who are actually talking about what you're listening to and really trying to bring personality to the experience. So it's very different than just simply seat a station with a song and then sit back and listen to it. We have that, of course, and we do it very well, but we believe, again, in the power of building those emotional connections through voice and personality.
It's built more around the experience than the algorithm, is kind of what you're saying.
Yeah, although the algorithm is really important. Again,
Sure.
I think the story here is it's the interplay between doing things well in the way that terrestrial radio has always done, great personality being expressed, storytelling, great programming around music, but leveraging technology to evolve that to make it more personalized for individuals. So the other component of what radio means to us is in this world is a huge investment in the underlying technology platform. So the ability to actually sequence tracks in a way that feel personal for you. Right? If you and I start listening to a Slacker station right now, what you hear will be different than what I hear because I've interacted with Slacker differently than you have.
Right.
So that the algorithms that drive that are really important. The algorithms that drive recommendations. We live in a world where there's we've heard today, massive amounts of audio content available, and one of the things that we bring to the table is the ability to actually make those kind of recommendations, say, oh, Mark, what you might like to listen to is the following because we've paid attention to the other things you've listened to. But there's a whole bunch of other elements to the platform that are important in this day and age. Billing integration with carriers so that we can actually have a sort of more seamless and frictionless migration into premium tiers, which are important in terms of monetization. We've built patented technology around being able to take your stations offline. Right? No one else can do what we can do around. If you're about to jump on a plane and you want to listen to one of your Slacker stations, you've download it, and the personalization capability continues as you
Even though you're not
with it.
streaming.
Even though you're not streaming, right? So there's a huge investment in that platform. So that's kind of the way we're approaching being radio in this day and age. So that's the first part of differentiation. The second part is that we believe that the path towards really fulfilling the potential of radio in this day and age is through partnerships. We don't believe that it makes sense for us to try and do it all on our own. And those partnerships really come in a lot of different flavors. So we have done an enormous amount with programming, that sort of, again, takes advantage of the platform. And we have a team ourselves that does great programming and sort of 60 or so former radio people, a great team of people that, again, understand what makes great radio, that are both programming stations, but also in many cases on air again. But we don't stop there. So we've done partnerships with lots of folks, Rob Tenenbaum and Craig Marks is a great example, right? They've programmed a number of experiences for us, stations for us, bringing their wealth of knowledge, their voice, their personalities to the experience and doing storytelling around music. I mean, really interesting programming like the 55 wussiest songs and things like that. And these experiences really drive great engagement. Our P1 listeners, the folks who listen to
your
those
metrics show that.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, fairly significant growth in listening for those folks who've actually engaged with that type of content. So with partnerships with folks like that, we have partnerships with brands around content, and we've been in partnership with ESPN and ABC and APM for a long time, and helping those brands extend their reach into our space and do more interesting things. If you look at ESPN and ABC on our platform, I would argue that there's as good an audio experience as you're going to get with those two brands because on our platform, ESPN listeners are able to customize what the experience that they're going to hear. It's going to be personalized to them. You can go into and have a My ESPN station that you've selected the teams you're interested in, you've selected the sports you're interested in, and the news you're going to hear is more personalized to you. That, I'll confess, that's a bit of a crude way of dealing with it, and our goal is to sort of continue to evolve that personalization. So there's ESPN, ABC. We've done a bunch of interesting things with ABC. We just launched a station this week around summer movies you should watch, bringing a lot of ABC personalities into the experience. Great, all that personality being expressed. I mean, there's so many. I'm struggling to remember the
No,
name.
that's a good example. Now, those are partnerships for content.
Yes.
How important are partnerships for distribution?
Yeah. So, good question. So, yeah, content's there. Distribution and billing, and there's a number of different types of partnerships we have. We have great partnerships with folks like Verizon, who we get pre-installs with Verizon, which is huge. Billing integration is huge, but we've gone way beyond that and basically said, look, we've built this amazing radio platform, and again, we don't think necessarily that we've got all the solutions for it in terms of. I mean, the radio world, for example, and personalities they have, we don't have all those personalities in-house. But there's other big brands like Samsung who have aspirations, of course, to build services portfolio and build a direct relationship with customers. And so we look at that and say, well, why wouldn't we power their radio? We powered AOL's radio experience for a long time. We're powering Samsung's Milk Music.
How big is that, by the way, if you're able to say?
I can't.
Okay.
but it's doing well, and it's growing all the time, again, because they have incredible reach, and they can do things from a marketing standpoint in reaching their audience that we can't do. Right. They have a reach and ability to spend that we don't. And again, so there's this blend of, let's partner with great content providers, talent and what have you. Let's partner with platforms that actually get us reach for our direct service, and let's partner with people who might have an aspiration to have an audio experience of their own as part of their portfolio. Another great example of what we call our platform as a service business is supporting Tesla. So we are one of just 2 services that are integrated into Tesla.
What does that mean, platform as a service?
But basically, again, we've got this set of radio capabilities, everything from our radio DJ tool that allows someone to program a station, to the sequencing capability around the station, billing capabilities, et cetera. And we're essentially saying, look, Samsung, why would you go build all of that? Because we've got all those capabilities. They essentially have taken all those APIs, the technical piece, and they've built their own layer on top of that. So if you go download Milk Music, it's hard to imagine that that's the same underlying guts as Slacker's direct product is. And frankly, I think they've done a great job of expressing that. I think it's a very creative execution of a radio experience. The dial that you turn your finger around is very creative, and it's very different than what we've done. And that might be the winning experience. We're the ones that are powering it. So Tesla's another example where they want an integrated streaming radio experience in their car. They have taken all of our underlying capabilities. They built the client that sits in the car itself. And it's a great distribution point for us. I bump into people all the time who are driving Teslas. And
where are you traveling?
It's California. You're all over the place. True. And the passion you see that Tesla owners have for the Slacker experience is really, I think it's really validating kind of the approach we're taking.
Absolutely. So I've often puzzled about why I hear, in some cases, more about players in the online radio space who don't have as much traction, as much usage as Slacker does, yet I hear more about them. There's more noise about some of these players, and without mentioning names, than Slacker. Why is that? Why don't I hear more about Slacker than some of these guys who have less traction?
It's a great question. And it'll sound a bit defensive, but I'll say that actually, go look at Edison's last research on brand awareness, and we do better than many of those people who you might hear about more in the trade.
So among consumers, you do?
Among consumers, right?
Yeah, the people are actually using online
among
radio.
The people here who are paying attention to the trade, maybe not. So I need probably to do a better job of attending these things. But there is a logic behind it. I mean, I think we again, a component of our approach that's different that I didn't actually get to is we're trying to build a real standalone business that actually stands on its own 2 feet and is profitable. There's a lot being written about the red ink in the space and folks who are chasing big audiences. and losing tons of money. And we have been very concerted in our approach of saying, look, we're going to focus on trying to go towards profitability and be a profitable standalone company, and sacrifice if it has to be, have sacrifice some degree of scale, at least in terms of our direct product. We'll make up a scale through things like Samsung, right? So we have been very distribution focused, and it's working. I mean, we actually do very well in terms of driving new listeners into our platform through distribution relationships. So we're where people are, as opposed to talking about ourselves a lot. So that's one component. And we've been focused very hard on trying to convert as many of the organic traffic that comes in, which is a pretty sizable number on a daily basis. The second component is, I mean, the reality is the economics of the business are not easy, right?
Well, that was my next question.
Yeah,
What's the path for music licensing? Where are we going to see that?
Well, let me just finish on the first piece. So the economics aren't easy, and so we've been focused very hard on making sure that our core economics worked as part of moving towards being profitable. And there is an opportunity there as we're close to it, where we get the kind of individual listener economics to be such that you can actually start dialing up money and spending on acquiring customers. It's something I've done a lot in other digital operations I've done, where you play the arbitrage on the lifetime value of the customer and just continue to buy customers as long as you can get the return. And this is a business that it's with a free listener ad monetized has been historically difficult to get to, but we're doing very well. We're on the cusp of being able to do that. Licensing. It's a complicated it's a complicated subject that we could probably talk about for hours, and there's a lot being talked about here. And I'm gonna sidestep some of the controversial issues. There's plenty that's being talked about with that. And Tim Westergren and Daniel Eck have said a lot about it. I mean, for us, we've chosen to license directly with the labels. It gives us an opportunity to do lots of interesting things, right? I mean, there's things that we do and can do that Pandora can't do. The idea that you can download our stations before you get on the plane and listen to it offline, they simply can't do that. They're not licensed to do it. And obviously the ability to give a full suite of services, from free radio to a paid radio with no ads and unlimited skips, but also full on-demand experience. All of that comes through licensing directly, and we enjoy great relationships with the music companies around promoting artists and doing interesting things in terms of content. The two things that sort of I'm paying close attention to, of course, in the world of licensing, is obviously rates. We're trying to run a company that can stand at its own 2 feet and be profitable. So, and the labels, the music companies have sort of an understandable concern around the degree to which the whole ecosystem is healthy, right? And that we're driving value into music. I mean, I come from a company that's built on IP and have a great deal of we have a great deal of focus on that, a great deal of respect for their desire to try and make sure that IP is being treated with respect and trying to drive as much value into it as possible. And if you just look at the music industry in the last, since 2000 to last year, and the data shows that it's gone from more than a $14 billion market down to less than $7 billion. I mean, $7 billion of economic value that's been lost to artists and music companies and retailers. You don't see Blockbusters around. You don't see Tower Records around anymore. And so it's understandable that there's a lot of angst around that. But there's no putting the genie back in the bottle, right? I mean, consumers now expect to be able to listen to what they want to listen to when they want to listen to it, and there's things going in the marketplace that set certain expectations around pricing, what have you. Netflix at
so what's
$8
going to
a
happen?
month. So I think the labels are going to continue to want to try and work with us to make sure that we're putting as much value in there as possible, and we want to do that. I think. Where I think some of the challenge is going to be is that ultimately the ability for the market to innovate fast enough around product and pricing is somewhat encumbered by that licensing scheme. And I hope that we can just continue to build a really constructive partnership with the music companies to innovate like that. And frankly, when I look at our opportunity as a radio service, I'm intrigued with the opportunities for us to innovate around, talk content and work with. I mean, the good 50% or more of listening on radio is talk content, and I think it's an opportunity for us to really innovate around that as part of our focus on being more of a radio service. I mean, music's at the core of it, but we're not just a music service.
Next week, Apple is, supposedly going to relaunch Beats and make its announcement. Nobody knows for sure at this point, at the point that we're discussing this, what's going to happen. But what is your expectation? Is your expectation that will make life tougher for you or easier for you? In other words, will it draw more attention to the space, or will it make your position on the totem pole more difficult, more challenging?
No, actually, I'm optimistic about it. I mean, and we take, we're sort of very encouraged by the fact that they're taking a page from our playbook. I mean, what we've done from the very beginning, again, working with talent that we've hired and partnering with other talent to bring voice to the experience is something we've been doing from the very beginning. They bought Beats, and Beats made a lot of fuss about them being human curated. But again, it's what we've been doing from the very beginning. So we're encouraged by that, and I think it's going to draw more attention to that as an approach. And the fact that we are, again, a company that is built. I mean, the capabilities we have are fairly scarce. There are very few companies who have the ability to do the personalization we have and have a sort of, and again, have this open platform approach. We think it's probably going to open more opportunities for us to partner with folks who are and should be reaching audiences through audio.
Brands. You're talking about brands.
Yeah, and brands from, again, a spectrum of brands. There's large brands who will sit there, whether they're internet companies who again want to have a portfolio of services and have a direct customer relationship, will look at, audio is massive. I mean, consumption of audio and music is massive, and it's a very engaging medium. And I think there's a number of companies.
You can actually bring the power of online radio to any brand that wants an online radio
Again,
platform.
so we're doing it with ESPN. We're doing a version of that with Samsung. We're doing it all the way down to the individual talent level, and I think and we've heard all kinds of great stories over the last 2 days of talent doing wonderful things with audio and their individual brands. And I think there's an opportunity for those brands to lean into the potential of the technology and say, how do I leverage these platforms to do interesting things, to extend my relationship with my audience? And I think we've barely begun. Right? I mean, this is, so I think while there's this threat of Apple becoming a big dominant player in it, I think the innovation has barely begun. And we're sitting in a very good place in terms of our underlying technologies and our approach towards partnerships. And I think the landscape 5 years from now is going to look very different. And our hope is that we can, again, work with brands at the individual level through the large companies to evolve the space and innovate. I mean, when TV was created, it's not as if all the people did was simply take movies and stick them on the TV, right? There was different forms of content that were created around it. And I chuckle a little bit right now, and we've done it, right? We're taking podcasts, we're cutting them up and doing best of Nerdist and things like that. It's a step down the path of really taking advantage of these unbelievably powerful platforms that are personalized and can deliver both at the consumer level something that's more valuable, but also give an opportunity for talent out there to do new and interesting things and not just simply take what they've already got and redistribute it.
Terrestrial radio tends to see the online radio space as its enemy, or online radio players as its enemy. We hear that often. But is that necessarily true, or is there a scenario for collaboration so that everyone can have more?
We completely believe and 100% believe that there is an opportunity there, big opportunity. I mean, it's a classic innovator's dilemma. People look at, for example, the music component of streaming and say, well, the economics are terrible. I think the terrestrial players do. And the economics are terrible, and it makes them a little bit nervous and they want to stay away from it. But again, I think for those who lean in and look at it and say, well, this is where the consumers are going. We heard this a little bit with Tom Masaka yesterday, talking about this. You can put your head in the sand and ignore what's going around, or you can pay attention to what consumers are doing and lean into and figure out how to make it work. So I think there's a huge opportunity there, and I was encouraged by what James Derby was saying yesterday, Federated Media, and what they're doing with their apps in local markets, and trying again to sort of say, look, this is the reality that we're in. Let's go build these apps and try and reach the audience. And so again, we think that the opportunity of working with a company like Slacker and the platform and capabilities that we have around great client experience, really unique and powerful underlying personalization and recommendation capabilities, radio programming capabilities, monetization capabilities, et cetera, and allowing the terrestrial players to do more with that is where the future is, and that ultimately I think that for those that are progressive and lean into that space, they're going to find opportunities to overcome the fact that the core economics aren't that great. I mean, subscription revenue isn't a real opportunity. And we're seeing greater and greater success of driving people up into the subscription.
Is a real opportunity.
Absolute opportunity, yes. And so there's while the core economics of music may not be great, there's much more to what a terrestrial company can do in terms of the portfolio of content they have and talent they have, and to start driving that into subscription products, for example.
Are you also suggesting that there are scenarios whereby people in the terrestrial radio space could partner with companies like Slacker?
Yeah, I mean, again, I think we are a company that's partnership focused, so it can be at a micro level or a larger level that we are building we've got our own stable of talent, if you wish, but there's a massive amount of talent out there that again should be using these platforms to reach an audience. So yes, there's absolute collaboration opportunity.
Last question. You spent some time with Disney. What did you learn at a content-driven brand like Disney that informs the way you look at the online audio space?
Yeah, it's. I mean, there's a ton that I learned, and frankly, there's a ton that anyone can learn just from looking at the company. So, I mean, the importance of brand and the importance of all of your efforts reinforcing the brand, and for us, that's really about delivering a great quality experience and evolving it down the path of being, radio reinvented. And obviously the content is king, right? I mean, without great content, whether it's third-party content we're working with or content that we've created, without adding that editorial voice, for example, we're not going to build value in our company. I think those companies that are only focused on being a distribution platform probably won't do very well, right? We're seeing this, whether it's Netflix or what have you. Companies need to do more than just be a good utility and get the content to people. They need to actually evolve it. So I think there's those elements. I mean, I think for anyone who have worked at the company to pay attention to what Bob Iger's done. I mean, he's done a brilliant job of again looking at what's going on around him. I think he's a brand that Tom Asa could put up there and say, look, these guys are doing a great job of it. They're not putting their head in the sand and ignoring what's going on around them. They're the first to try and get their content. And by the way, creating much angst in the distribution pipelines and distribution relationships. Let's get our content in front of the audiences where they're going. Let's get it up on the web and what have you. Let's get it up into the iTunes store before anybody else was, and really being proactive about trying to reach audiences on the different platforms. So I think for the whole sort of, if you will, whole terrestrial world, there's a lot to be learned by looking at a company like that and saying how do you again evolve the company. And in the case of Disney, it's not that effort of moving into the digital space is not. It's not as if it's hastened the demise of their core business. In many cases, they discovered that it's actually incremental. It's really growing the audience because you're reaching the audience where they want to be. It's not all cannibalizing. Yes.
Duncan Orrell-Jones, CEO of Slacker. Thank you, Duncan, so much. Thank you.